Hey, my name is David Buck, and right now we're going to learn how to use the tone curve in Lightroom Classic. So long story short, the tone curve is a contrast adjustment tool. It manages the lights, the darks, highlights, and shadows with precise control. Well, if it only deals with contrast, why not just use this contrast slider here in the basic tab? Well, because the contrast slider only does one thing, and that it separates the lights from the darks, makes them further apart. The lighter's lighter, the darker's darker. And the tone curve can do that too, but it offers so much more control within the tones of your image. So if you see in any of my other videos on editing, you'll know that contrast comes last in the editing process. Take out the contrast first, make the adjustments that you want to make, then add the contrast back in at the end. So here in the tone curve, we have a straight line from the bottom left to the top right. Blacks being at the bottom left, whites being at the top right. You can see here, you're given the tonal range indicators if you hover over the line, similarly to how it shows the brightness values in the histogram. Shadows, highlights, whites, blacks, brights, darks. The line is the method that Lightroom is using to interpret the brightness or luminosity levels within your image. If it stays a straight line, Lightroom keeps interpreting it the same way. But if you change the line by adding a point or by adjusting these sliders here, you're telling Lightroom to change the values of those luminosity levels to follow where the new curve goes. So I slide the curve towards the top, brighter. I slide the curve towards the bottom, darker. I move the black point towards white, the blacks become more white. Same with the whites. If I take the whites and move them towards blacks, that's exactly what happens. I can add as many points as I want along the line and pull them towards brighter and darker. So it gives us complete control of the luminosity and therefore the contrast of our image. Okay, great. But how does that help me? Well, here's what you actually need to know. You see this little button right here? When I push it and go hover around the image, you'll see that this little point right here slides up and down the tone curve line. So where you're hovering your cursor on your image is the tone in the line where the point is now showing. If you click and hold on that point and pull it up or down, it will change the values of that tonal range. Now, I love editing visually, so the fact that I can click and drag, awesome. Click a lighter point, pull it up, and just like that, I've adjusted the desired tones with a couple of clicks and drags. Click on the blackest parts, that will bring those up. Got some pesky highlights? No problem. Just point and click and pull them where you want them. If you want a less destructive method, use the parametric curve here on the left, choose your button, and drag up and down your darks, your highlights, and your midtones. And the changes will stay within these predefined ranges of those tones. Want to adjust those tonal ranges? You can drag these sliders here to change the desired range. So you can adjust the contrast of your image with a few points and a few clicks. This is by far my favorite feature in the tone curve and the only one that I actually use on a regular basis. The other way that the tone curve panel is useful is because its changes affect over top of everything else that you're doing to an image. It is a great way to add a finishing pop to an image and then to save that in your presets. If you're editing and you get a look that you really like in the finish with your tone curve, save that preset and save just the tone curve option on that preset, and then you can bulk apply it to all of your other images as a finishing touch in the future. So then you don't have to do the work all over again. Super helpful for a speedy and efficient workflow. You can even save it as an export preset so it automatically applies to all your photos on the way out of Lightroom if you really like it. Okay, so now that we've covered the stuff you need to know, here's the stuff you don't need to know. You see these color buttons right here? Just don't touch them. Now, if you're like my wife and somebody says, don't touch this, and she really thinks it means I have to touch it, you need to learn a new shortcut here. And that is Command-Z. That's the undo shortcut, because everything that you do with these colors is going to be bad. So just don't touch them. If you must know, these buttons adjust the contrast of one of the 3 different color ranges. When you adjust the curve, it adds the opposite color. So if you want less red, it adds more blue and vice versa. And you see the colors here in each of the panels showing you which colors you're adjusting. Add one color to the shadows, add the opposite color to the highlights, and you've created what's called a split toning color effect, commonly used in filmmaking. Specifically, this is designed to give you a color toning tool, and though with extreme skill it can be useful, the color grading tab is way better at doing this. So back to the first instruction, don't touch these. We'll cover color grading in the next video.